Well, thank you very much. Everybody's still awake and ready for the last two talks of the evening. Well, thank you very much to the Flanders Fashion Institute for inviting us to talk today. The brief we were given was to talk about innovative fashion retail, and whilst brainstorming with my team here, we came up with the concept of converging retail. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do that is because we see this as a trend in the wider community. We see it in each of the industries that we work in, and also we wanted to converge industry and academia together. And the reason that we want to do that is that we believe that through collaboration, which we've heard a lot about today, we're stronger. We can share, we can learn from each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we can build a story together. And one of the reasons that we kind of came up with this concept is rooted in this particular diagram here. So Lewis and Bridger wrote about the quest for authenticity and the soul of the new 21st century consumer. And I'm sure most of you in the audience would agree that down the bottom, all of us suffer from scarcities of time, attention, and trust. And although this was 2001, it's still relevant today. So these kind of trends in the wider atmosphere have basically shaped this notion of convergence and the way that consumers are behaving. And we've came up with three kind of sub-themes. So they are cognate, co-create, and curate. So we're going to talk about these three topics today, and first of all, I'll hand over to Sanela, who's going to talk about cognate. Thank you.
Thank you, Karinna. So here we are in this amazing sartorial city of Antwerp, home of Antwerp 6, and from what I've seen in the last 2 days, should be really Antwerp 60 with the talent that's born out in this city. And in a big room like this, we have 4 large screens, and all of us probably carry another small screen in our hands, mobile phones and portable devices. And what occurred to me is that over the couple of days I've been checking out fashion talks and to see what everyone is saying. And today it's completely exploding. And what used to be a very private event that you and I would have shared here in this room is now completely shared and retweeted and around the world and around Europe or further afield. And what really that told me is that, or tells all of us, is that this super connected world that we live in is driving the innovation in retail. And we've heard many names of it today, being multi-channel or omni-channel. I think I'd like to call it cognate me retail. Cognate as a word is really about things coming together and connecting, stemming from the same place, the importance of a brand, importance of product, importance of customer. And where does it really all lead and where has it come from, we wonder? Well, I can share that with you a little bit today. The speed of developments is increasing, and every decade is bringing us different ways we'd like to shop. And whilst it took 50 years, as you can see on the left, from appearance of department stores until the specialist malls arrived, and then another 70 years before we all started shopping online, it's only been 3 years since 2010. Yes, only 3 years since the arrival of social and omni. And this is what's interesting, is that it's completely revolutionized the way we like to live and shop and interact. It's completely rewriting all the rules. But it's not just technology for technology's sake. One gets the sense that really this time it's about the customer, and it's for the customer. And interestingly more, it's often by the customer as well. Since the recession, one would think that customers would be happy with very little, and actually they're asking for a lot more. We want to be able to choose offline and online, when and how. And as the populations in many countries are getting older, we're finding that +40 customers want more service and expert advice. And then as others are getting born and are young, millennials, they're asking for interactivity and convenience. So very different polar opposites in terms of what's happening with our customers today. So it's not just about millennials, it's about the plus 40 that we need to think about, because they're the ones with most disposable cash as well. So what's happening is that we really want to have our cake and eat it as customers. And what's even more, these omni-channel customers, all of us between age 20 and 40, we are no pushovers. Really annoying, isn't it? They demonstrate in this eclectic mix of independence and seeking advice through self-service and community. And they're the ones that actually are dictating whether their happiness translates into loyalty and purchase, and as we all know, they quickly decide to air publicly when they're not happy. So one may ask a question: why is it all worth it for you as a brand, as a designer, as a retailer? Why is it worth it, all this trouble, this personalizing, this connectivity, this innovation that seems to be, asked for of us all the time? Well, this is why. I'll just draw attention to the last line that shows that multi-channel customers, or omni-channel customers, they're spending 82% more per transaction than the store alone customers. I think that in itself is a staggering number. And what's even more so is that the 20% of all clothing sales are now conducted through omni-channel customers as well. And this number is only going to go up. So who is capturing their imagination? What's on their radar? What are they doing? Let's take a look. These connected customers have actually changed the way they shop. What we thought was the moment when they come in contact with your brand or your product is actually not the case at all. There's a whole pre-moment in time that is all about learning and sharing and researching. We're hungry for empowerment, for information. We're a very strong force as omni-channel customers, and I'm sure you do it all too. And those brands that are cognating their thinking and their innovation and that connect to customers in that respect, they're the ones that actually rule in reinterpreting all the time, and we've heard a lot about that today. And they are always protective over their brands, and they are writing their own rules as they go. Take Google, for example. I don't know how many of you were surprised about Google Glass. I certainly wasn't. They're completely in tune and in sync with their customers. They go where the customers go. And what's fantastic to see is that fashion designers are also changing the way that innovation and technology are helping the world that they live in. Iris van Herpen's collection here, I think, is a wonderful example of this futuristic fashion sensibility that is experimenting, pushing boundaries of 3D printing and laser cutting. I'm sure you've seen recently Christopher Kane's recent laser cutting exercise, or wonderful works on spring-summer a few weeks ago. 3D printing has become the new frontier of self-expression, and it's only just starting. And guess what? Omni-channel customers love it too. It's a way that they can also self-express. Fab Cafe in Tokyo is a place where retail meets leisure, and customers can come along and create product from scratch, and that's unique to them and one of a kind. How couture is that, when I can actually create something and craft it myself? And this is really where craft meets technology, where like-minded community can meet and exchange ideas and share. And what's even more interesting, they can now be retailers too. They can sell their products through many platforms, be it Shapeways or through Fab Cafe. And then these omni-channel customers, they now can access runways and collections, and they can also have an option to pre-order. Topshop here is a fast fashion retailer, and it's phenomenal again to see that someone like Topshop is reaching out to the community and sharing the content and allowing for their customers to actually be in a driving seat. So as Apple devices that we all mentioned a lot today show us, this boundary between product, brand, retailer, service provider, manufacturer is completely blurred. Customers do not think like that anymore. Therefore, it's quite natural that we are now entering a stage where all these fragmented developments really are leading us into a personal cloud retail. It's a place that is multi-channel. It's a place where I can keep and organize my information and share it amongst my group and share information and media. So if I can now create my own designs, have them printed, connect with the designer directly, if I can have everything delivered to my home, then what is the reason to go to a store? What kind of stores do retailers and customers want? And as we become more omni, then wouldn't you conclude that the reason to come to a store is really to be with like-minded people, to share, to belong, to find somewhere where you can exchange what you have for something that someone else has, like inspiration or service. I believe that all this portable technology and innovation is helping us lead a lifestyle that is completely about us, about you, about me, about us on the stage, all of us as individuals or as a group. And this is what brands are realizing, that they need to reach out and connect in that way. So it's not necessarily about life being more techy, it's about being able to choose. Funny enough, in 2010, just as omni-channel started to come into its own, Lauren jeans, handmade jeans brand was born in Brooklyn. Kronk here, working in his studio, he decided to start a very simple back to basics label that is all about understanding his customers' bodies. Not more than that, just personalization and craft. So you'd kind of think, what does that have to do with this omni super connected world, particularly as a lot of stores in Antwerp are artisanal like this? Well, I believe that as the world that we live in provides us with technologies and innovation, we can now lead a very happy, balanced diet of maximalist and minimalist retail that we can choose from. As you can see on the other side of the retail spectrum, still in the jean world, Selfridges recently launched Denim Studio, shows us how a brand as old as a department store model is again doing something very interesting. They're crowdsourcing the campaign. So they're inviting like-minded community to come and create this fantastic campaign that they launched the department with. And the department is vast. It offers 11,000 pairs of jeans between £11 and £11,000. You know, it's an incredible choice. And here they are creating the campaign together. So this then becomes a story that all those individuals can share. They all own a little part of it, a little part of that brand that they can carry with them, because it is about owning experiences now, not just things. And even before the space opened, it was about previewing collection online, so not in store, but in a virtual space and talking about it on Twitter over 12 hours Jeanathon. And as the space opened, one was able to personalize the jeans or just scoot through the self-service checkout that you can see there. So again, ability to choose. I think that Selfridges is a brand innovator. It's a brand that's basing its latest developments, however, on, again, a very simple promise of caring and sharing of its customers. So even though it's only been 3 years since this arrival of Omni, is this beginning of a new revolution? Or is this really what omni-channel retail and fashion are really like now? And one says that rules are being rewritten and designers are clients, the clients are innovators, and the online and offline are one. Innovation is turning this good retail that we know into a great me retail. I'll hand over to John to tell you a little bit more about another C.
Thanks, Sanela. So I got the C that has co-creation in it. Now, co-creation isn't new. I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But actually what it is and what's great about co-creation and what's very interesting about co-creation is where it's going and what's happening out there at the moment and what we're seeing, and as a design agency, how it's making us think differently, which is really, really important. We always have to think differently and change. But co-creation is obviously about product innovation. You can bring product to market quicker. It's about engaging with new customers, really, really important. And it's about testing and experimenting. You know, there are lots of different ways you can do, lots of different things you can do, but it helps bring different ideas to the forefront. But one of the things it really should do, and one of the things some of the businesses and brands I'm going to talk about do, is it actually starts to create a new dialogue, and it opens access. And I think that's what's really, really important is storytelling, and storytelling through co-creation is what we're seeing happening, and actually what we're doing in spaces. We design spaces for brands, fashion brands, environments, and storytelling is hugely important to what we do. I'm not going to give you a history lesson, but obviously co-creation's been going on since the 30s, 40s, the 50s, the 60s. H&M have obviously done it exceptionally well with their designer collaborations with Lagerfeld in 2004, and they're still doing it, and it's very successful. And they'll still continue to do it, and other brands will do it. And obviously Chris has spoken about that with Converse. And it's exciting, and it's a really lovely opportunity to mix up product. But actually what's interesting, I think, and what we believe is interesting, is actually different brands out there doing different things with co-creation. So this is a Parisian brand that you might know about, but they're called Each Other. And actually, it's a fusion between artists and poets and musicians and filmmakers, but fundamentally fashion designers and gifted craftsmen. And they come together and create new, unique, simply unique, they say, products. And the idea of a poet and a fashion designer coming together to create products is really, really interesting. And they talk about this is like the road where we meet each other, where like-minded people meet each other. And again, that's another really important thing from brands and retailers, is you're opening up stores and you're opening up yourself to like-minded people. You're letting people into your brand, so you have to connect with people. And I think these guys are doing something really interesting. It's just a nice example of how co-creation is used in different people. And then Supergar, fantastic brand, but then they did something very different with the blogger. They actually brought the blogger in. They brought Leandra Medine in from the Man Repeller fashion blog, and they gave her a capsule range. And actually what that does is it gives them dialogue, and it gives them story, and it opens them up to a new, different, diverse audience, and it gives them content, and it tells wonderful stories. And again, another interesting co-creation, but then we're using blogger with brands. So that's another way, for example, of how that sort of works. And then this is a really interesting thing that happened this year in London. J. Crew landed, and they opened up a blink and you miss it 48-hour pop-up shop. And really it was to create dialogue and to tell people that actually what they're going to do in November is launch a store on Regent Street. But guess where they did this? Central School of St. Martin's. Now that's fascinating and interesting, and what an interesting collaboration that is. And the reason they're doing that is actually because they're inviting designers to produce product for them, and they're going to give a scholarship to somebody else, to one lucky fashion MA student. And that's a really, really powerful thing. They've also done a knitwear competition where they've opened that up, and actually the winner of that product, the winner of the product, or the best product, is going to get produced and will be in their stores. And that's really, really powerful. It's powerful for education, and it's powerful for the brand. And actually Louise Wilson, who's the fashion professor there, said, this is really important to us. You know, we need brands. You know, higher education needs brands to help us, because without their support, we're dead. And that's quite a worrying thing, but these things are really sort of changing the way people are thinking about their products. And what else she said, which is really fascinating, is this is about live learning. You can't get better than that with collaboration and co-creation. Live learning. You're learning, you're mixing, and then your product is there live in front of people. I think it's a really powerful story. So that's some sort of retailers and brands. Well, you know, actually what's really important, and you know, we work across retail and leisure, and what we're seeing is the sort of mix of both worlds. And this is Ace Hotel. You might know about them. They have a few hotels around the world, LA, New York. They've just opened up one in Shoreditch. But they are inviting people in into their space to co-create. They're inviting all sorts of different people in. So brands have picked up on this. They're inviting brands in. They're creating products specifically for Ace Hotel. And in their rooms, for example, you can buy the product in there. That's great. You can actually search and buy product that's downstairs. They have a retail offer at their front desk. Now I just wanted to read something because it was just quite interesting what they say. You know, Ace Hotel is a collection of individuals, multiple and exclusive, held together by an affinity for the soulful. We're not here to reinvent the hotel, but to readdress its conventions to keep them fresh, energized and human. And that's a hotel talking. I mean, that's really fascinating, and I think this is a really interesting mix where leisure and retail are starting to transfer thinking and ideas, and where they're opening up their space to retail to offer, and brands are picking up on that and coming into their spaces. And on the flip side of that, we have the £36.7 million Burberry store on Regent Street that has divided opinion. It's a beautiful, beautiful location, but what is brilliant about what they're doing is they're changing that space to do something different. So they'll invite artists like Jake Buggin, and they'll bring customers in on a ballot. So the space turns into a music venue. That gives them content and new storytelling and a new audience potentially. One thing we've done in the past 2 or 3 years, we worked with Liberty on Regent Street. You know, Liberty opened in 1875. It's quite a powerful brand, and you know, Chris was talking about icons. That's a British icon for us, definitely. And they came to us because we've worked with them before, and they trusted us. And actually, they came to us with a project. They wanted us to redesign their beauty hall. Fantastic, what a lovely project. But this is Liberty, and this is beauty. So we wanted to do something exceptionally different and something that was quite unique for such a unique space. So we had a think, and we had thought about it, and we actually brought in a theatre director. Because what we do is we do tell stories in spaces, and actually there's no better way to tell a story than with a theatre director. So what we got is we got some ideas behind what we were trying to do with this space. And we created this narrative. He created this sort of narrative, this play called Transformation. And it's a dialogue between the space and the customer and the brand. And actually what that did for us is it started to give us some thoughts and ideas about this space, about what we could actually do in it. Because the interesting thing about it was actually there's going to be 2 spaces, so we need to connect the language between the 2 spaces. And one space is really big and one space is really small. So we created, and we do this quite a lot, it's really useful, we create models where we can sort of move things around, look through spaces, and you know, it's not a new technique, you do it at university, but it's really helpful, and it's really great to do that with the client and the theatre director and other people, and it just allowed us to start to think about this space in a completely different way. And here it is, and it's been really, really successful for them. You know, we've co-created this space, and it works exceptionally well. After a few months, it's trading really well. It's got something very unique and different about it. We started putting pigments of colour in the floor. There's all sorts of different things in there, but the storytelling is throughout the space, the touch points. How customers walk through that space is very, very unique. It's very intimate, but it's also about discovery, and it's very, very different for them, but it fits into their language. One of the spaces has a catwalk where the customers can just walk down and browse. And we created this furniture which is kind of effortlessly sort of flowing through the space to allow the brands to have this dialogue with their customers. And Joe has picked up on this earlier, but actually this business, What's Your Store? Joe was talking about the technology, and I think that's really, really key. This is really interesting. But for us, it's really interesting in the fact that the technology behind it is almost the hero behind the scenes. It's a store for customers. It's called Your Store. The customers come in, they create their own product, they leave with their own product, and they go. There is no real brand for Your Store. It's really interesting. This is proper co-creation with customers, coming in, making product, and leaving. And I think it's, obviously the technology behind it is quite unique. We'll see where it goes. It's in a pop-up, but it'll probably be there for a while. But it's a very exciting world, and we're really excited to be part of it. I'm now going to hand over to Karinna.
Yeah. Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, so the last trend that we've decided to curate together as part of the convergence theme is about curation. And this is not something that's new by any means, but if you go back to the slide which I said at the very beginning with the soul of the new consumer and the scarcities of time, attention, and trust, when we want to spend our time, when we want to buy purchases, we have a lot of noise and we have a lot of clutter around us. So as a brand, as a journalist, as a blogger, as a stakeholder in the kind of fashion cycle and circle, make life easier for your customer by being a curator, by interpreting what's right and by editing what's right for your customer. Because if you make that journey to whatever it is you want them to consume, whether it's content or an image or a product, you're going to be more successful, I would suggest. One of the examples, and we talked about, Joe talked about Colette earlier, is always to look at good examples of retail concepts which are already out there within the field. And these are kind of stores which are visited by buyers, retail design people, bloggers, etc. on a regular basis. But what's special or what has been successful about them is this notion of curation. The creators of each of these different brands, so Colette, Dover Street Market, 10 Corso Como, the thing that joins them together is that they really get the notion of curation. And they can, for example, have in Colette a pencil sharpener, which is €1, selling in the same store as a dress, which is 10,000 euros. But there's something that unites that together, and it's this notion of picking something and interpreting it right for your customer, and also creating that in a space as well. And why I've also used these as examples, although they're not new, is that they also are consistent and they're innovative in terms of things like their omni-channel. So if you go on these companies' websites, I would suggest that they are quite good in terms of having a consistent online and offline experience. And also they're pushing the boundaries in terms of internationalization. So Dover Street Market opening in New York this year and 10 Corso Como in Shanghai. And that also shows the strength of their business model because it can travel. Another brand which I would kind of categorize in this successful concept stores book is Opening Ceremony. And they are innovative. I've picked an example of something they did recently at New York Fashion Week, where again, we can see this theme of convergence. They brought together a retail offer and their marketing, branding, their fashion show. It's the first time they'd ever showed a runway show at New York Fashion Week all in one place. And not just that, but they decided to show it at Pier 47, which was one of the areas of New York which was affected by Hurricane Sandy. And again, going back to that first diagram at the beginning, the gesture of doing that and the strategy of doing that is meaningful, it's clever. Not only that, but if you look at the curated type of brands which are there, so you have fashion brands, makeup brands, technology, publishing, food brands, and perhaps most importantly, I'd like to introduce you, if you've not already read about, the Dominic Ansel Bakery, which is the company who sells cronuts, which are the most desired bakery item on the planet at the moment, due to their trademark and the difficulty of getting them. And again, I think that just shows the cleverness of the creation of the curators of opening ceremony as well. Pop-ups, they're kind of not going away. A lot of people have suggested where are they in terms of their life cycle, but they're very much accepted to be a legitimate kind of market research strategy. They're very good for young emerging designers, and they are a good promotional device as well. And a number of companies, I know that you have this in Antwerp as well, have put together pop-up cooperatives, so where groups of either young designers will come together all in one roof, or will be separate. Some initiatives are Pop-Up Britain in the UK, which is subsidised by the government, and Republic Spaces in New York as well. Another example of this pop-up cooperative mentality is evident within Etsy. And again, this is another example of convergence. So this is a pure play platform, which has lots of small independent creators and producers on it. And Etsy are experimenting with bricks and mortar stores. So they've done this in New York a couple of times, they've done it in other countries around the world. And this is also transferred to the department store format. So Nordstrom realizing the brand potential, and again, this notion of storytelling, which I think I counted about 15 times, John said it in his presentation. Nordstrom and Etsy had this collaboration where they picked young designers, created a story, and created a platform for them in store, which again I would suggest is good practice. So the word that we've said a lot today is story, and again, this is not a new trend within the marketplace. If you look at any trend forecasting website, they talk about the notion of storytelling. But one way that you can think about it in a retail context is creating a story around the combination of the space, i.e. your retail space, whether that's online or offline, and the stock that you pick. And again, relating that back to the notion of curation. So the choice and the level of detail and the research that you put into creating what I've called here the sweet spot or the story are complete critical success factors. And I think it's really interesting in the next two examples I've given you actually have the word story in their brand. So here we have story, which Joe talked about in her presentation this morning, but I'm looking at it from a VM and a retail experience perspective. So this is a store which is not a large format store, but what's special about it is that it changes its complete space and stock mix every 5 to 6 weeks based on a specific theme. So at the moment, I was just there two weeks ago, and the theme is Made in America. And again, I've picked it as a good example because the online experience is consistent. It tells you who are the makers in the particular store and gives you a story and a background to what they're doing. Also, and I wanted to show as well that this is evident and works within the mass market as well. So, and other stories, H&M's sister brand creating a new business model where the store format, everything is flexible, it moves around, and instead of kind of being a slave to trends, or have created 4 kind of key stories that they work on a regular season, which they perceive to be more kind of timeless and have more longevity. And then this is another interesting example. This is a store in Tokyo, which started as a pure play retailer called The, and recently opened a brick and mortar store called The Shop. And what is special about that, again, is the story is that they only have one variety of each type of product. Again, it's not new. Muji was kind of founded on this principle, but this is really good for the time-conscious, pressured customer because it helps facilitate their choice, and it's also an aesthetic choice as well. And then this is their website. So again, you can see a consistent online and offline presence. This is another example of a kind of new breed concept store, the Broken Arm, which is in Paris. And I've chosen it as an example because it is really good at what I would describe as curating a consumption constellation. I like the letter C. And what it does is it has nailed its target market so specifically. So it has a picture of what their customer drinks, what their customer eats, what pen they write with, what iPad cover they wear, what small selection of brands they create, and curate it in a very beautiful environment. And again, we see this blend of retail and leisure coming together with the use of a cafe. Third space is the example of leisure and retail coming together. It basically describes the first space being your home, second space being your work, and the third space being somewhere you want to spend your kind of social time and where you want to move around with people. And it can be an anchor within the community. An example that I have of that is the Tom's flagship store, which is in Venice Beach in LA. And here, the product within the store is almost secondary. So it's a coffee shop. You can do yoga there. You can go for craft evenings. A lot of people have business meetings, etc. there as well. And there's a really strong notion of community surrounding it. Another way that you can introduce third space within your store is through art. And this is Chanel's most recent flagship store in London. Other brands like Ralph Lauren and Tom Ford also place a particular emphasis on art, and they handpick every piece of art that goes into the flagship stores so that they have this closeness and the connection with the brand. Zara, this is their store in Rome, who used design as a third space to increase the value of their products, and then Warby Parker, which we heard about again today as well. I'm speeding up because I'm running out of time. Generation ///. What this means is the young millennial generation who describe themselves on their social medias as poet /blogger /musician /fashion designer. And again, this is evidenced in where we're seeing the direction of concept stores as well. So the top one on the left is in Singapore, New York, and in Moscow. And these are all multifunctional, multi-purpose spaces which serve the slash generation. And then very quickly, the last trend is the notion of content curation. And Imran talked about it this afternoon, when he said, again, this makes people's life easier. If you can pull together information and choices and aggregate information for them. It's also the way, the suggestion that Web 4.0 is. So where I see this being evident is the notion of things like shoppable magazines. So Grazia announced this week they're trying it again to promote a shoppable, completely shoppable magazine. Kering have just this week again launched a digital magazine which isn't shoppable, but it has a strong push on kind of content and commerce. And Monogram is a startup organization which offers very kind of low cost or sometimes free software to help you create your own digital magazines. And last but not least is the notion of consumer curation. So these examples here, Nuji, List, ShopStyle, and Supply, all have slightly different business models, but they all serve to basically help your decision-making process easier when you shop on the internet. One criticism that I would make is they all look almost identical, which I think is a bit of a shame. So, with 0 seconds and the red light flashing, I hope you enjoyed our theme, which was about convergence, cognation, co-creation, and curation. And please ask us any questions or come up to us afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks.